Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another rules breakdown, and this time we're going to be covering this Middle-earth role-playing, which came out from Iron Crown Enterprises ICE in 1984. Now, this is heavily based on the Rolemaster system, which I think we've covered in the past, so we're going to see a lot of similarities there. It's very, very heavily table-based. But, as usual, we need a sample character. Unfortunately, the box set comes with a number of them for this sample adventure within it. And we're just going to choose the first one, PC1 Mutfast Strangford, a sober young hobbit from the marsh in the Shire. So, whenever we're making dice rolls, we'll be referring to him. But anyway, let's go on and look through the rules of MERP. And skills. Well, skills are broken down on page 8, which goes through the dice rolling conventions within MERP. So, first of all, we've got a 1 to 100 roll, so basically a percentile roll. You're rolling a d100, if it's under the skill you succeed. Simple as that. The open-ended rolls tend to be used a lot more in MERP though, and these are where you roll a d100 and you add the skill to it and compare it to a table. But that d100 explodes. If you roll on 95 or higher, you roll another d100 and add it. If you roll a 5 or lower, you roll a d100 and subtract it. And if that rolls over a 95, you continue subtracting. So there's massive variability in the amount you can get in the skills. But basically it's rolling a d100, adding the skill and comparing it to a table. And that table is much later in the book. Page 78, I believe, if I can get there. Page 78, moving maneuver table. So, we look at one of his moving maneuver skills, and let's say he's trying to climb. He's adding 41 to that. So we roll a d100, we get 36. He adds his 41 for climbing to that, so 77. We compare it to this table. Now we can see there's difficulties across the top. Routine, easy, light, medium, very hard, extremely hard, sheer hard, folly, and absurd. The 78 lands us here and shows that at routine, easy, and light difficulties, he's 100% successful, so he'd climb his full distance. But medium, it's down to 60%, very hard 50, extremely hard 40, sheer hard 30, folly 10, and absurd difficulty he would actually fail to climb. And that's what it is. So you are adding the amount and comparing it to this table, and obviously you can get absolutely massive successes and you can get absolutely massive failures as well. But on routine difficulties you can be down to a minus 150 and still succeed, at least in a very simple way, a small way. Now, when you are comparing people's skills where somebody's working against it, so you're sneaking and somebody's trying to spot you, you're still rolling on this table, but you're subtracting their skill to counter yours. So you roll your dice, you add yours, you subtract theirs and any other penalties the Games Master might apply, and then comparing it to the table. And initiative. Well, initiative dealt with on page 48, sequence of actions. And basically actions go by what type of action you're taking. So anybody who's preparing or casting a spell goes first. Missile and thrown weapon attacks go second. Moving maneuvers, melee attacks and melee parrying, movement and static maneuvers. And it goes through in that sequence. So anybody firing missile always goes before somebody making a melee attack. But how do you determine if somebody's going first if two people are doing a melee attack, for example? Well, that's dealt with a few pages further. Sequencing some attacks at the same time. So, all spell attacks are resolved simultaneously. All missile and thrown weapon attacks are resolved simultaneously. Melee attacks are resolved one at a time. Character with the highest movement and maneuver bonus resolves his attack first. So it's just down to that. Which does create the interesting situation of two people firing an arrow at one another can both kill them. But two people in a melee attack, the fastest would kill the other first, if they are down to low enough hit points, etc., etc. But it does create that slight oddity that ranged attacks you both get to act even if one person is taken down by that attack. And so combat. Well, combat is an open-ended dice roll, so we're going to be adding a skill to a D100 roll. And it details how it works here on page 51. And one of the points, if we look at the character sheet, now he's not really a fighter, he's a Hobbit. So his one-handed edged weapon skill is only 21 with his dagger. So he is adding 21. However, if he wants to keep some of that back for defense, to penalize an opponent's dice roll, he can do. So he could split it and keep 10 to penalize other people by 10, and have the remaining 11. But we'll not go through that. That's how parrying works. You allocate out some of your combat skill to your defense. But in this case, we'll just be doing a full attack. He's stabbing with his dagger. So, we now need to look up the tables, which are on page 70. So, a one-handed slashing weapons attack. Now he's adding his 21. We'll roll a D100. We get an 81. Adding his 21, so we get 102. So, against different types of armor, we can see 102 does 7 levels of damage. Against chain, it does 10, and is a critical of an A, which means you roll on the critical table modified by -20. Against rigid armor, it's 11 and a B, which means we are rolling on the critical table at -10. Against soft armor, it's a 14 and a C, and against no armor, it's a 15 and a C. And C is the critical roll unmodified. We've also got D's and E's on here, which are critical roll is modified by +10, critical roll is modified by +20. So we've got the critical tables here for a slashing critical weapon. So we said it's against somebody, well, what armor is he wearing? I cannot see any armor. He is wearing no armor, it looks like. So that would be a 15 C damage. So we are rolling on the slashing critical table. So we throw. We get 79. So a medium 5 wound plus 6 hits, 1 hit per round, -10 to activity, stunned for 2 rounds. So that takes his damage from 15 up to 21. Now, we can already figure damage out. We've got 21 points of damage, plus those other things from the critical hit. But the attack results are determined here on page 52. And they mention that you can roll on the fumbles tables if you failed to hit. You get basic hits, you get criticals. Hits per round is each round after the crit is taken, the target takes this many additional hit points due to pain and bleeding. So that was 1 point for that wound. So every round until he gets treated, he's going to be taking an extra point of damage. But he's taken 21 this round. And health. Well, health is detailed as part of your body development skill. So he has 52 hit points, so he's taken 21 damage, so he's down to 31 now. What's that actually mean? Well, it has no penalties as per Dungeons & Dragons. You're not going to be slowed down at all except by the critical hits you've taken. But on page 43 here, we've got detailing that you can die, so you can get immediate death straight from a critical hit. You can get excessive hits, so if a character receives more than the sum of his body development hit total and his constitution stat, the soul will depart after 6 rounds. And death after a number of rounds. So if you keep taking damage until you're treated, then that can lead to death as well. You can bleed out from taking a critical hit. There's also stuff about here with healing. You can heal with herbs, natural healing and first aid. 1 every hour if resting, 1 every 3 hours if not resting. We've got healing by spells, And we've got various stuff about injury, death, and healing on the previous page, 42. Stat deterioration, recovery tables, so how long it will take to recover from certain types of injury. And advancement. Well, that's dealt with on page 16 of the rulebook, experience points. And it talks about how you earn them. You get 1 point for every hit you receive during a battle, critical points, kill points, etc. And we see how many points you earn from kill points, from casting spells, how much you earn from critical points. There's lots of tables here to determine how much experience you get throughout the adventure. And we can see on page 19 the experience point table. So to get out of level 1 you need 10,000. Level 2 is 20,000, up to level 10, which is 150,000. And we've got advancing a level. What happens? You allocate development points to increase skill ranks, update your skill rank bonuses, roll for body hits, body of development, or a spell list, update level bonuses for the character's profession, retotal any skill bonuses, increase your PowerPoint total, and mark the character's new level. But the first of those, development points, we need to flick on a few pages forward. And we can see for the different classes, as you level up, you get a certain amount of development points. So a warrior gets 3 to go into their movement and maneuver. They get 5 into their weapon skills, 2 into general skills. And depending on which profession you've got, you get skill points to put in different places. And you will calculate all of those out, which will lead to extra hit points that add to your extra combat abilities. But it's very much dependent on which profession you've got, where you can put those points. So that is MERP. A very nice system. Now, it obviously has a lot of tables, which doesn't make it a system that I'm particularly looking for. I prefer something you can run just out of your head, so you're not spending all that time looking things up. But I can see how those critical hits and fumble tables would make combat very, very interesting. Because you can see from just our sample that they are quite common. So it goes from being, I did 5 points of damage to that orc, to I slashed his leg and he staggered off, which is far more descriptive and will make combat far, far more interesting and memorable. So MERP is highly recommended if that's what you're looking for. Now, as usual, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough, so thank you very much for watching. But as always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.